Rotavirus in India, the studies have shown that there is continuous reassortment between the bovine and the human strains, and that the strain is continuously evolving. In different regions it is different, and at different times of the year it is different, and in different years it is different. There is no study to show that rotavirus vaccine has reduced the incidence of diarrhea even in one study in India. From the community perspective, how do we decide which vaccines we should introduce in a country? We've taken a hypothetical case where there is rotavirus control available for 200 crores, saves one life per 20,000. The whole thing is hypothetical. There is polio control, which costs 350 crores and saves one life per 10,000. And there's TB control, which costs 700 crores and saves one life per 5,000. Which programs would you take if you had a budgetary constraint of 1,000 crores? The method is simple. You arrange it in increasing cost utility. So on top comes TB control, where you save one life per 5,000, and you spend 700 crores there. Then what is remaining you use for the next most useful program. There are many who say that each life is important, and therefore we must use the rotavirus program, which costs only 200 crores. But when we spend that money, instead of spending it on TB, you would be losing 3 lives for every life that you save while you use the rotavirus vaccine. Therefore, it would not only be non-ethical, it is probably nearly criminal not to use vaccines where it is most cost-effective. 50% of the population in India don't receive the basic vaccines, all of which together cost rupees 30. The hepatitis B program, HPV costs 9,000 per child, rotavirus costs 2,000 per child, and pneumococcal costs 12,000 per child. From the community perspective, newer vaccines, are they ethical? The vaccine is exorbitantly expensive. It produces very little benefit, 3.6 cases of pneumonia per 1,000 vaccinated. It doubles the risk of asthma. The community risks getting antibiotic resistant strains. From the perspective of the individual, just because he can afford it, would it be ethical to prescribe the vaccine, especially when you realize that for each dose of the vaccine, there's margin of 1,000 rupees to the doctor. The retail price is 4,000, but 1,000 rupees goes straight to the doctor. If the vaccine is as bad as I have suggested, how is it that the WHO is able to recommend it? These are some of the half-truths that are used to push the vaccine. 10.6 million children under 5 years of age die each year. Pneumonia is the leading cause of these deaths. This is the SAGE report. Pneumonia is a vaccine-preventable disease. The unsaid part of the truth is that this is a vaccine against only one bacteria amongst the numerous causes for pneumonia, and that too against a limited number of strains. It is dishonest to call this vaccine, which is against such a limited number of strains of the pneumococcal bacteria, when there are so many other causes for pneumonia, as a pneumonia vaccine, as if it will reduce all pneumonia. This is from the Cochrane meta-analysis. It says that pneumococcal vaccine protects against 80% of vaccine strain invasive disease. It protects against vaccine strain invasive disease. Its effectiveness is 80%. The other half of the truth is that there is no reduction in the overall mortality by using the vaccine, also published in the same Cochrane report. The incidence of vaccine-strain invasive disease was so low that the absolute risk difference was only 0.002, and that analysis you had to vaccinate 500 children to reduce one death. Now this is what I would like you to concentrate on: misleading statistics. Risk reduction of 50% sounds good if the risk of something comes down by 50%. This article was published in the journal, in a cancer journal. Suppose the risk comes down from 4% to 2%, you would still have a risk difference or a relative risk of 50%. However, another equally honest statistical statement for that fact would be that it affords 2% reduction in the absolute risk. If you tell that as a truth, it will be far more difficult to sell the vaccine. Yellow fever, the vaccine we have is very good. Let's say it's 100% protective. Would we use the vaccine? We wouldn't, because we don't have the disease here. The absolute risk reduction is 0. Now, here is the difference between risk ratio and absolute risk reduction. The risk reduction, if the reduction of disease in control is to vaccine, if controls had only 1 and vaccines had 2, 1 per 1,000, 2 per 1,000, the risk difference would be 50%. But the absolute risk reduction is 0.001. There is no new statistics required. All the figures are there when you develop the relative risk. We don't need any other data. But once you give it the risk difference, the risk reduction as 50%, we can't calculate backwards. But while we were making that calculation, if you gave the absolute risk reduction, you would know that it is 0.001%. And 1 divided by the ARR, the absolute risk reduction, gives you the numbers needed to treat. So 1 by 0.001 tells you that you need to treat 1,000 children to benefit 1 child. And now if you know the cost of the vaccine, you just multiply it by the number of 1,000 and you know the cost per life saved. This is published by the editor of the BMJ. It says, Fiona says that efficacy as absolute risk reduction to calculate cost benefits easily. Impressive sounding reductions in relative risk can mask smaller reductions in absolute risk. Clinical decisions must be based on absolute risk reduction rather than relative risk. How can we avoid buying a dead donkey? What can the MSF do? This is a suggestion for a resolution at the next World Health Assembly. Interventions to enhance child survival, efficacy must be reported, always in terms of absolute risk reduction, so that member countries, member states, can calculate the cost of those interventions. We are not against vaccines. We are all for vaccines. But we would not like to be misled into thinking based on relative risk when the absolute risk reduction is so easily available but is not being provided. Thank you.